Hello everyone, in this video we'll be solving quadratic equations by completing the square method. But before attempting to solve the equations, try solving it first by factoring, since completing the square method requires more time to solve quadratics or quadratic equation. Alright, so let's solve all of these equations right here. So let's start with the one on top. So we have x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. And once again, before we start completing the square method, we attempt solving the equation first by using factoring, since completing the square method takes much longer to do. Alright, so let's do it. So first then we try factoring. So we have to equate that to 0. So we have factors of x squared, x and x. 6 here, factors of 6, negative 6 will be 3 and 2, right? 3 and 2, and this is negative, so bigger factor must be negative and the smaller one is positive. And if we multiply 2 times negative 3, it will become negative 6. And if we add up 2x and minus 3x, it will become negative x. So this is factorable. So we don't need completing the square method on this. And now let's go to equation number 2. So here we have the second equation, x squared minus 3x minus 2 equals 0. So first then is we have to try factoring it out. We have the parentheses over here, and then equate the two factors to 0. So we have here x and x, and third term is negative 2. So what are the factors of negative 2 that will add up to negative 3? So that will be just 2 and 1. Right? So negative and positive. And here, if you notice, if we do the FOIL and these factors, we won't go back to this original equation. So if we do FOIL, so x times x is x squared plus x times 1 is x. Then negative 2 times x, that's negative 2x. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2 equals 0. So if we simplify this, we have x squared minus 2x and x, that is negative x minus 2 equals 0. So if you notice, this equation is not the same as the original equation above. So this is negative 3x and this is negative x. So let's do completing the square method. As a first step, we move the constant to the right. So we have now x squared minus 3x equals negative, become positive 2. So here we need to find the third term on the left hand side of the equation to make this a perfect square. What we do on the left, we should do it on the right also. So we have that blank right there. Whatever we add over here, we add the same way to the right. So to find the third term, to make this a perfect square, is we have to focus our attention on the second term coefficient, that's 3. So divide the coefficient by 2, so we have 3 over 2. And then square it. So the same way on the right, 3 halves, and then square. So that's the process whenever we have the leading coefficient is 1. So other than 1, all you have to do is factor out the coefficient other than 1, so like 2 or 3 or all other numbers except 0. So here, left-hand side of the equation is a perfect square, so we can now write this the same way as x, that's x, and then minus, since this is minus, and then the third term is 3 halves squared. And the right-hand side is equal to 2 plus 3 squared is 9 over 2 squared is 4. So this is simplified as we multiply by 4 over 4 on the left hand side, so we're going to have the same denominator. And now we can proceed to addition. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 9 is 17 over 4. So left hand side remain the same, x minus 3 halves square. And from here, to get rid of the exponent 2 right there, is we have to take the square root on both sides of the equation. So we have now x minus 3 halves. So from here we ended up canceling the square and the radical sign, so we have x minus 3 halves. In the right hand side is positive negative is square root of 17, and this can be written the same way as the square root of 4. So the equation now becomes x minus 3 halves equals positive negative square root of 17 divided by square root of 4 is 2. Simplify this further, moving the constant to the right. So we have x is equal to, from negative it will become positive, so that is 3 halves plus or minus square root of 17 divided by 2. So now x is equal to, we have the same denominator, so we can now combine or add or subtract the numerator. So we have 3 plus or minus is square root of 17. So this is now our final answer. Or we can simply rewrite our solution to this. Since we have 2 roots of x, we can write it the same way as x is equal to 3 plus square root of 17 over 2, and the other one 3 minus square root of 17 over 2. So these are the correct answers. Now let's go to the third equation. So we have here 5x squared minus 2x plus 4 equals 0. So first try factoring the equation. So we set up both parentheses over here. And since this is 5x, we have 5x here and x. And 4 factors of 4, positive 4 can be, we have 4 and 1 and then 2 and 2. So if we do 4 and 1 over here, since this is positive and negative, so we add it. So that should be negative, both of them. Since negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. And here, middle term, coefficient is negative 2. Add it up to negative 2 if you have this value right here. So that is negative 5x. And 4 times x is 4x. That's negative again. So negative 4x. So we'll end up with negative 9x. But in here, the middle term is negative 2x. So now if we use the other factors of 4, 2 and 2, we replace this with 2 and 2. So the other factors of 4 will be 2 and 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. So that would be okay. And then by them up to negative 2x middle term. Negative 2x times 5x times 2, that's negative 10x. So we ended up with negative 12x. So this is negative 2x. So there's no way we can factor it. So we now proceed to completing the squares method. So first again is move the constant to the right hand side. So we have 5x squared minus 2x equals negative 4. Moving positive 4 to the right hand side will become negative. Alright, the same way, subtracting 4 on here, and on the right hand side subtracting 4 the same way. That's the same. But you know, that way it will become faster. Instead of subtracting 4 left side and right side, just move the constant to the right hand side and change the sign. From positive it will become negative. If this were negative, it will become positive on the right hand side. And now since the leading coefficient is 5, not 1, that means we need to factor out 5. So factor out 5 from this part, left hand side of the equation. So we have 5 times the quantity x squared minus 2 over 5x, close parenthesis. Since if you multiply 5 times 2/5, negative 2/5 of x, we ended up with just 2x, right? Cancel 5. And the right hand side remained the same, negative 4. Now to find the third term, to make this a perfect square, left hand side of the equation, so we have to divide the coefficient of the second term by 2 and square it. So from here, so we have 5 times the quantity x squared minus 2/5 of x plus divide the coefficient of the second term by 2, so that is 2 divided by 10, right? Since 2 divided by 5 divided by 2, that will be 2 divided by 10 and square it. And what we do on the left, we should do it on the right. So we have negative 4 plus 2 over 10 squared. And since this factor right here is inside the parentheses, if you notice, we have
multiplier of 5.
We have to multiply this value by 5. Now the terms inside the parentheses is a perfect square. So we have now 5 times the quantity x, and since it is minus, so we have minus over here, and 2 over 10. Then we have now squared right there. And the right hand side remain the same. We can simplify. Negative 4 plus 2 squared is 4. Divided by 10 squared, so let's say 10 times 10 multiplied by 5. So we cancel 5, we cancel 10, becomes 2 right here. So this equals negative 4 plus 4 divided by 10 times 2 is 20. Simplify the right hand side. So we multiply this by 20 over 20. So we're going to have the same denominator. So we can now proceed adding the numerator. So 20 times 4 is 80. That's negative. So that's negative 80 plus 4 over 20. So this is now negative 76 over 20. This can be simplified further as negative 76 over 2, right? So divide by 2 on there. Divide by 2 both of them. Negative 38 over 10. 20 divided by 2 is 10. And the left hand side remains the same. 5 times the quantity x minus 2 over 10 squared. So we have now 5 times quantity x minus 2 over 10 squared equals negative 38 over 10. Simplify the equation further. We have here 2 over 10, that is 1/5. And here 38 over 10 divided by 2, numerator and the denominator, we ended up with negative 38 divided by 2 is 19. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So we have 5 times the quantity x minus 1 over 5 squared equals negative 19 over 5. Divide the whole equation by 5. So we have x minus 1 over 5 squared equals, and this 5 right here can be written as 5 over 1. So that is negative 19 over 5, transforming the division into multiplication. So times, take the reciprocal of the denominator, so we have 1 over 5. So this becomes negative 19 over 25. So we now have x minus 1 over 5 squared equals negative 19 over 25. Now we take the square root of both sides of the equation. So we have here, cancel the square, cancel the radical sign. We ended up x minus 1 over 5 equals positive negative is square root of negative 19 over 25. And this can be written the same way as positive negative is square root of 19 times square root of negative 1 divided by square root of 25. So this is further simplified as plus or minus square root of 19, and we have here I is equal to square root of negative 1. So substitute that value for square root of negative 1. We have I, and divided by square root of 25 is 5. So left hand side is the same, x minus 1 over 5. And now we're transposing negative 1 over 5 to the right hand side. So we have x is equal to, from negative it will become positive 1 over 5 plus or minus square root of 19 times I divided by 5. So x is equal to, we have the same denominator 5, so we have 1 plus or minus square root of 19 times I all over 5. We have the positive negative right there, so we have 2 roots of x. So that's our final answer. So now let's go to equation number 4. So we have here 3x squared minus 5x minus 1 equals 0. And once again, we try to factor the equation. Okay, so we have 3x squared over here, so we have 3x and x over here, and negative 1. So you have just factors, positive 1 and 1. Since it's minus, we're subtracting. So that means 1 is positive, 1 is negative. So if we do multiply these terms right here and add it, we should end up with negative 5 as the coefficient of the second term. If not, that means this is not factorable. So we have 1x, that's negative, and 3x times 1 is positive 3x. So we have the sum of 2x, it's positive 2x. But then we have here negative 5x. So this simply means it's not factorable. So we do completing the square method. Okay, so first transform this equation, putting the constant to the right. So we have 3x squared minus 5x equals negative 1 becomes positive 1. And here we have the leading coefficient 3. So we can factor that out. So we have now 3 times the quantity x squared minus 5x over 3, right? Since we have 3 over here, if we multiply 3 times 5 over 3, we ended up with just 5. So, and the right hand side remain the same. So now we start finding the third term, since we have just 2 terms over here to make a perfect square. So we have now 3 times the quantity x squared minus 5/3 x plus the third term equals 1 plus the term that we added on here. So for the third term, we have to divide the coefficient of second term by 2. So this is now 5 divided by 3 divided by 2. That will become 5 over 6. And we square it. So on the right hand side, we will be doing the same. So 5 over 6 is squared. And then if you notice, we have 3 as multiplier right there. So we multiply this term by 3. We have that 3 right there. The left hand side turned out to be a perfect square now. So the left hand side can be written the same way as now. 3 times the quantity x from x squared right here, x. This is minus, so we have minus here. And 5 over 6. 5 over 6 is square. Or this can be written the same way as 3 times x minus 5 over 6 times x minus 5 over 6. And to verify if we did it correctly, we have to FOIL these two factors. We should end up to the same equation as here. So you can do that. That's an option. You can do that or not doing it at all. It will be fine. What we have to do is just verify. So here now we do FOIL on these two factors over here. So x times x is x squared. So put 3 right there, multiplier. And then 5 over 6 times x, that's minus. So negative 5 over 6x. And then x times 5 over 6, that's negative. So 5 over 6x, and then multiply the right terms on both factors, both negative, that will become positive. So, or can be written the same way as 5 over 6 again, and put a square right there. And simplify this further, we have 3 times x squared, and we have here 5 over 6x, then the same way it's repeated. So you're adding that, so that you have 2 times 5 over 6 x plus 5 over 6 is squared. So we have here 2 and 6 becomes 5 over 3, right? So we have here now 3 times the quantity x squared minus we have 5/3 x plus 5 over 6 e squared. So now to compare, this part right here is exactly the same as this part right here, right? So we have negative 5/3 x, that's the middle term, the same way on here. And the third term, 5 over 6 squared, the same thing. All right. And so we're going back to this part, okay? So from here, we simplify the right-hand side of the equation. So we have here is equal to 1 plus 5 squared over 6 squared, right? So that is 25 divided by 6, 36. So we just put it simply as 6 times 6 and times 3. That's for the purpose of simplifying more easily. So we have 3 over 6, that's 2. So we ended up with 1 plus 25 divided by 6 times 2 is 12. Simplify it further. We have multiply the first term by 12 over 12 times 1, right? For the purpose of simplifying the fraction, it's 25 over 12. So we now have the same denominator. So we have 12 plus 25 is 37 over 12. So we have here the whole equation now. 3 times the quantity x minus 5 over 6 squared equals 37 over 12. Divide the whole equation by 3 since we have a coefficient of 3 right there. And 3 here can be written the same way as 3 over 1. So we have here x minus 5 over 6 squared is equal to, now the right hand side will be transformed to 37 over 12 divided by 3 over 1. Transform this into this division, will transform it into multiplication. So we have 37 divided by 12 times, we have here the denominator transform into its reciprocal. So we have 37 over 12 multiplied by 1/3. So we ended up on the right hand side, 37 times 1 is 37 divided by 12 times 3 is 36. To get rid of the square right there, we have to take the square root of both sides of the equation. So we ended up canceling the square right there and the radical sign. So we have x minus 5 over 6 equals positive and negative is square root of 37 divided by 36. And this can be written the same way as positive and negative is square root of 37 divided by is square root of 36. And this is simply written the same way again as square root of 37 divided by square root of 36 is 6. We now have x minus 5 over 6 equals positive negative square root of 37 divided by 6. Simplify the equation further. So x is equal to, moving this 5 over 6 to the right hand side, negative will become positive. So we have 5 over 6 plus or minus square root of 37 over 6. So x is equal to, we have the same denominator, so we have now 5 plus or minus square root of 37 divided by 6. So this is our final answer.